There's a quiet evolution happening in the world of wellness, one that's not about treatments or techniques, but about tuning in. And today's conversation is for the practitioners, the healers, the professionals who are beginning to ask, what if I could bring all of myself to the work that I do? Welcome to Connecting to Spirit. I am your host, Lisa Brandis, and I'm here to help you unlock your intuition, channel with clarity, and deep dive into self-discovery, all while navigating the ups and downs of personal and spiritual growth. If you're ready to say goodbye to self-doubt, embrace your unique gifts, and connect with a supportive community on the same journey, then you're in the right place. Whether you're just starting out or you've been walking this path for years, this podcast is here to guide you, support you, and inspire you every step of the way. So grab a cozy spot, settle in, and let's dive into some empowering insights together. My special guest today is Terri Messenger, a transformational coach whose own journey through self-doubt, addiction, and trauma led her to discover the life-changing power of NLP and hypnosis. After radically transforming her own life, she found her true calling, which is guiding others to reprogram their subconscious minds, release trauma, and unlock their highest potential. Terri's mission is especially powerful for those in the wellness field, people who are called to heal others, but sometimes lose sight of their own inner alignment. This episode is about how to come home to your intuitive power and lead from a place of purpose. Welcome to Connecting to Spirit.
Oh, thank you, Lisa. It is so good to be here and worth every moment of getting set up for this beautiful podcast.
We are recording in a professional studio today, and beautiful Terri went on the journey with me of figuring this out. I kind of wanted to explore the difference between being in the presence and in the room with somebody. I was having a chat with my husband, and he was saying that Stephen Bartlett was talking about how when he's in an interview and you can really see and feel the energy of the person, it allows for a more transformative experience. And that's what I'm really keen on today. So we're going to deep dive in.
I couldn't agree more, actually. You know, there's nothing like, being in person. And I feel that we lost that a little bit through the pandemic.
Yep.
So it's actually great to be here in person with you, Lisa.
We were talking in the car on the way in, Terri, about probably one of your most pivotal points on your journey that kind of flipped the script for you and took you on a deep dive into your own self-healing, and which led to NLP. Do you want to let us know a little bit about what that turning point journey was for you?
Yeah, sure. Well, look, I believe that I always had a gift within me, and I was one of those kind of people that grew up feeling a little bit like the black sheep. I didn't excel in school, but I found that any topics that I did, it was either I was at the top of the class or I was right down the bottom. I never kind of did anything in between. I was quite a troubled teenager, so I kind of led a bit of a rebellious life. I really had everything on a plate for me. I went to a Catholic school. I also contribute a lot of my public relations skills, Lisa, to the fact that I had gone through 8 different schools. So I had to adapt very well to kind of change and people. But what I did find is that I excelled on stage. And, a lot of people will say to me, is confidence something that we acquire or is it born? And I don't believe you are born with confidence. Nobody is born with confidence. And I felt that by default, because you as a channeler would understand this, you've got Anya. And you kind of tap into Anya and you get these downloads and these incredible transmissions, which I've experienced myself. And they're just, you can't make this stuff up. And so for me, it was really about the fact that I had this kind of other part of me that would come out And it was that part of me on stage. It was that part of me when I needed to perform, and it was just something that I really adapted to. So after being sacked from 8 jobs in a row, that was a really big pivotal time in my life.
Is it because you're a true entrepreneur?
Absolutely. I'm unemployable, Lisa. You don't know what you don't know. And really in life, I knew that when I went into the wrong jobs, because mum and dad, they put me through all this education. So I had a lot of good education, and I went to business college. It wasn't for me to be in an administrative role. You know, I wanted to be out the front.
Needed to shine better than that.
I wanted to be out the front with people. And, you know, that is where I sang. But I think this comes back to people's purpose. Sometimes you don't know, there's a missing link in life and you don't know why. And quite often it's because you haven't tapped into your true life purpose. I was called to find my purpose. So it was almost like the universe kept throwing me against the wall. And, you know, if you believe in God, you know, you can't blame God when bad things happen. But quite often God will allow things to happen, you know, so that we can kind of carve our character and create that part of us that, you know, we're supposed to become. So, you know, all these signs of being in the wrong jobs, getting fired, my self-esteem obviously plummeted.
Yeah, I can imagine.
Absolutely terrible. And, you know, then I remember I accidentally fell over my first job where I was in a sales role. And what I didn't know is I didn't know, but I excelled in. So on my first day, I sold 12 pairs of shoes, and I thought that was terrible. Just doing what came naturally, and didn't have any signs at that young age of 18 that, hang on a minute, Terri, you know, this is what you're called to do. You're called to connect with people. Was it about sales? I don't think so, Lisa. I think it was about connecting with the other person and really getting to know them. Like, I found that I would know why they were buying the shoes. I mean, it was a very high-end shoe shop and it was in the city. And so we were getting like celebrities and people like that would be coming through. And I would find out, what are you here for? And it was just a natural way about me that I would be able to connect with people.
I think that's the key word there, isn't it? Confidence.
Yeah.
And being able to connect with people. I love what you said about not everyone's born confident. You know, it's kind of a learnt behaviour and develops over time. And I kind of think intuition's a little bit the same. We kind of believe that some people are just naturally confident and naturally gifted or naturally intuitive or spiritual or psychic. But in my experience, it's a learnt skill. If there's that passion and if we follow our passion and what it is that lights us up, and it sounds to me like you found that natural ability through sales, through just caring and having a genuine curiosity about people and an interest in their lives. And I find that when we naturally bond with someone, and we know that sales is an emotional transaction. So when someone feels valued, they feel like you've seen them. And then naturally it's, how do I help you through sales? So then how do I help you? And then almost the shoes sell themselves, don't they? Because they've come in with a purpose, and mostly what they're going to do is walk out of that shop and feel like, wow, that lady was amazing. And
well, you're connecting with people. And you know, when I did eventually learn neuro-linguistic programming, and of course I had to go through life and learn all my other lessons.
Yeah, don't skip over that bit. So how did you
to that? So, you know,
how did you come to learn NLP? So
I did all the things that normal people did. You know, I got married at 24 years of age. I had my first baby when I was 26. And then, you know, I was a natural mother in a way. So the instinct of being a mother was quite natural. It was like what you see in the animal kingdom, but it wasn't enough. I couldn't just be that person that was at home with children. And then, of course, by the time I got to the third one, I had probably one of the worst cases that I can possibly imagine of postnatal depression. And, you know, life kind of went down a very dark, slippery slope. I managed to get myself up a bit when I found my passion. I joined the church and, I even did a Bachelor of Ministries, which I didn't actually carry.
So just for the timeline of understanding for the listeners, was that when because I know you married Ian, who's a chiropractor, and you both ran a centre?
That's right. So if we
was
go
that
back,
around the same time,
well,
or was
that's
that
a good
before?
question. You must have tapped in. You're very intuitive, Lisa, because I met Ian through my studies. Now, I didn't.
Oh, through the church?
Through Baptist Theological College.
Oh,
so I did not complete. I do need to say I did not complete my Bachelor of Ministries.
Fell in love, and then that was it.
But
Nothing else.
I met his daughter. Oh. And she was a student and I was a student. And then, my life, nothing seemed to add up. And I think when people are in a position where things are not right, their lives are not on track, it almost seems like a messy jigsaw puzzle.
Yeah. Like one closed door after another where just nothing seems to go your way.
Well, it's like, why am I here? What am I doing here? Nothing kind of made sense.
Yeah.
I did this because I was hungry for something. So my soul was searching for the purpose that was calling me. And unfortunately, it did end up resulting in a marital breakdown. So my marital breakdown happened after being with my childhood sweetheart. So the way that it all happened, everything came to a screeching halt. But when it did happen, nobody could accept it that was around me because we were like the perfect couple. We had the children, we had the house, we had what seemed like everything. And we had so many friends and we were everyone's barbecue friends and, so we had all of these things, but secretly deep down inside, we were sort of two lost souls in a way. I feel that I lost myself. Now, we're great friends today, and I'm so grateful that, he is the father of my children. When I met Ian, he'd lost his wife. So his wife passed away in 2006, and he'd been on a long journey as well. So he'd been suffering with her for quite a few years. So when that happened, it seemed like everything happened quick, but it didn't happen as quick as what people thought. So on the other side of the world, there was my life, and then on his side of the world, there was his life. And, when his wife passed away, when my marriage broke down, when we met and we came together, it was like it was meant to be. It was almost ordained. But for a lot of people, it was like, this is too fast, this is too quick. But for both of us,
difference how, quite often people will have very strong opinions on the choices that we're making. It can make it so hard. It's hard enough to make these massive life changes, let alone having everyone's opinions weighing in on it.
Yeah, and that taught me to become very strong. Yeah. And I think a lot of our adversities, Lisa, do teach us strength. And I had a lot of adversities through my childhood, through my teenage years. I had a lot of trauma. So there was already so much that was buried. And usually what I find is this is very typical. Classically, my clients were aged between 28 and 58. So that seemed to be the age category. And the reason it was 28 is because 28 seems to be an age when people start to kind of settle down. A lot of life things seem to settle and things start to catch up with them. And I think that's when the wheels fell off for me. I believe that really the wheels had fallen off around 27, 28. So my client, because they say our clients are a mirror of us and they might be 2 steps behind us. They're not necessarily 10 years behind us. And so, it's the same thing. They're searching. I was searching.
Led you to NLP? It was just that searching.
Lost.
I get a lot of that with my students, just feeling like something's missing, but they don't necessarily know what it is. Or I've climbed that acquisition ladder, got the kids, got the house, got the car, got the status, but then still it's like, oh, I thought this was meant to bring happiness. So we realize then that the happiness doesn't come from the materialistic gains, does it? That for me, the transformation comes from that deep connection to our soul, and then that allows, like we spoke earlier, of connection. You know, to me, when we deeply connect with someone, things just shift, don't they? I think
look, you know, when you find your purpose, and this is where I've come to know that it's the genius zone, which is a bit of an evolution for me, and the podcast and the master key. They're the two evolutions. And, you know, so long story short, I met Ian and he decided that he would put me through neuro-linguistic programming. Now, I didn't know it was going to be such a life-changing situation because
I felt that when I did my study too. You don't realise how much you actually unpack of your own life in part of the training when you're we were both discussing, we both did the long diploma for our clinical hypnotherapy.
Yes.
And but that's a beautiful gift, isn't it? We think initially we're doing it to be able to serve others and make a difference with others, and yet here it is, we start with ourselves.
Exactly.
Yeah,
so a week in the life of, if you are doing 1 hour of neuro-linguistic programming, that if with a very good practitioner can be like 100 years. And I'm not even joking. And I'll tell you why, because there's a lot of modalities, and I won't bore you with all the different modalities, but the perceptive shifts. So the way that you look at the world, the way you speak to people, the way you rapport. And I remember thinking, I know this stuff, you know, like this is
came naturally to you.
Yeah, I feel like I had been doing a lot of it, but there's something about conscious competency as well. Like, okay, you're more vigilant, if you will. I think the big turning point, though, Lisa, was we had a day where we did timeline therapy.
Oh, and I've studied that.
Yeah, timeline therapy is like nothing on this earth. And I've gone on to do a lot of quantum physics and super conscious. A lot of the super conscious and the, you know, with the mixture of my diploma with hypnosis and the spiritual gift, I guess, as well. So when I did the timeline for me personally, you had to, you know, discover that time was of a, you know, every single person has a different timeline. And it was a matter of discovering, well, how do you do your past? How do you do your future? How do you do your present? And quite often people have got their past in front of them, hence why they can't move forward. So, you know, when I learnt that you had to really subconsciously organise, and you could reorganise time and then map out what were the 3 significant emotional traumatic events. And mine happened to be obviously the one where, you know, my marriage had broken down. So you look at the most recent one. So that recent one and the darkness and everything that was going on for me personally that had no reflection on anyone else. It was just my own journey. So there was that element, and there was then the 16-year-old. So there was a significant time going back at 16 where I had a trauma. And then, of course, the first one. So the first one was around the age of 8. So all of these 3, even though there was a lot of others in between, what happens is you're utilising it like weight-bearing walls. So if you've got a house with structure and you pull away the main weight-bearing walls, what happens to the roof?
Have you been feeling called to learn Reiki? Not just to channel powerful healing energy, but also to awaken your intuition in the process. Now it's easier than ever. After 22 years of teaching Reiki in person, I've created a high-quality online training experience that gives you lifetime access to become a certified and accredited intuitive Reiki healer. Through Intuitive Reiki International, you'll gain the skills to step into a rewarding new career. Plus, you'll connect with a thriving community of like-minded healers and make a real difference in people's lives. If you feel the calling, don't wait. The time is now to embrace your passion and start your Reiki journey. Visit intuitivereiki.online to get started today. Yeah,
it collapses. So in the same way, what we're doing is we're going, right, we're bringing that one, we're going to knock that one over. We're going to go back to the 8-year-old child. We're going to knock that one over. We're going to go to the other one in the middle, which happened to be, for me, 16. We're going to knock that one over. But in doing that, you're sort of taking yourself back in time and you're learning. And this is the big element, like the learning position. And, when I did that, it took around about 20 minutes and my life absolutely shifted and changed.
Radical change.
So dramatically. Yeah. And I didn't expect it. I did not expect such a life-changing, And I'm very much, in the Christian world, when I was doing, when I was at church and I was doing all those sorts of things, I was really well known as like an evangelist. So I've got that evangelist spirit. Yeah. Whereas if I come across something good, I don't hide it. I share it with the world. So, of course, we, set up Clinic. Ian had been a chiropractor for, some 30 years. However, we re-established a clinic together and he brought a lot of his clients because being so incredible at what he did. And, I had a captive audience. So, I built a very successful business very quickly. Yep. So that was my starting, and when people would come in, their lives would change so dramatically. So I was healing detectives with the most traumatic, what they'd witnessed.
Oh, the power of hypnosis for unlocking trauma and just rewiring the brain so that we can release the emotion to the pain. Exactly. And then be able to accept it, because we can't change it, it's happened, but really just find a place of acceptance and awareness of what it is to be able to move through. It does create really big transformational breakthroughs for people, doesn't it?
It really does. And then I was shifting war vets. Now that's a big one. So, and they never came in to say, I need to be healed from my war experience, So usually it was they had an addiction. In this case, a man had smoked 2 packets of cigarettes every single day. And then I heard a whisper of him being in the war in Croatia. And I said, we need to deal with that. Oh, no, but they don't like to talk about it.
No, very private.
Yeah.
Especially with their emotions.
Well, they're just locked into it.
Yep.
So we unlocked that and that set him free. And, of course, that's where it makes the addiction, it makes the transformation more real, more strong, more rock solid. So they're not just cutting something off at a sort of like you're pulling off the plant and then the weed is regrowing or whatever. You're literally going deep underneath the system. You're pulling that out and you're extracting it
at the core. Yeah,
exactly.
I found when I was taught hypnosis, we were taught that sometimes some therapies just turn off a dripping tap, whereas with kind of catch the water and empty the cup. So if you've got a dripping tap, you've got the water, you're just emptying the cup. But with hypnotherapy, we turn the tap off. So it really does allow us to make those internal changes. And addiction is moving away from pain or towards pleasure, so quite often when we look at an understanding of addiction, and ultimately these people just need to be loved and supported, and yet from a cultural perspective, it's like they get kicked to the curb really and kind of judged a lot in society. So I think it's a cry for help.
Well, people are attracting also back in the same patterns, and what I've discovered is that we keep attracting the same patterns, the emotions, all of the elements until we learn. So we've really got to have that.
Back.
Yeah. Yep. And it's like the universe saying, well, you wouldn't put a 17-year-old teenager in a car and let them drive if they've never learnt. They've got to learn first. And the moment they learn, that person that's helping them can jump out of the car. They can, redo it. That's my metaphor. And that's exactly how it is in life. If we
it's really empowering, isn't it?
Yeah.
When we give them the skills
Mm.
And then we help them. It's almost walking with them through those dark patches, knowing that they're supported, that they're nurtured, and ultimately in that non-judgmental space, isn't it? And we don't judge because we've been through our own experiences. And I think that's what makes for a huge, powerful, supportive transfer.
Yeah. And so when people can go back, say, on their timeline, and NLP has so many powerful modalities, fast phobia cures, it has trauma stress releases. So I was kind of bringing these all together and releasing people's trauma. And what I found is when I entered into the online space in 2017, that was a bit of a rude shock because
we were talking about that earlier. We both literally took an in-person and also teaching workshops to the online digital space, and it's completely different. It wasn't as easy as I'd thought either. So
it was very different. I thought, oh, this is going to be a walk in the park.
Especially when you've gotten used to a level of success. Like I was just saying, we didn't have to do much marketing. People were just coming. Word of mouth referral was really strong. Yeah. And then all of a sudden it's a
whole
totally different world.
But you really need to know who your niche is. So if you're in the online space, you're not, like the sort of work that we're doing here, you can really, and a great coach can help anyone, even if it means, because I'd helped musicians and I can't play the piano. I can't sing for nuts, but I would be able to help those musicians because I had the right tools. And that's really the sign of a great coach. You don't have to necessarily know everything, but you just need to know how to shift a person's trauma, unleash them so that they can rise in their power. And their gift is what's within them, and that is what can then come out. And this was the big magic gold nugget for me when I entered into the online space and then thought, oh my gosh, everybody's a confidence coach, everybody's a trauma coach, everybody's doing this. And so you're sort of swimming with a sea of sharks. Yep. And, a lot of people just sort of grabbed on as well because it was a good, especially through the pandemic and when that happened. So really what happened for me is I had to look at not trauma and the fact that that is my specialty, that is my, superpower of releasing and healing and doing all those things. What I had to look at is what was happening, what was the evolution after that person healed. And that's what made me suddenly go back to clinic days and go, well, what did happen? Men, businessmen became multimillionaires. Women found their voice, and suddenly,
so powerful. There's so many women that struggle with that.
Exactly. So they would suddenly come in and say, and the most famous words that I would hear is, Terri, you're never going to believe this. And the reason that I would hear those words so often is because what they were about to tell me next
they didn't believe.
They didn't know, and they never spoke to me about it. And in the end, I'd be like, well, try me because I'm getting used to this. And for every person, it was different because what was happening is it was lifting that glass, that ceiling off, and it was allowing them to discover their life purpose. And that's where the Genius Zone was born. Turning pain to power, that's where purpose, passion, and the master key, because I realized that it doesn't matter who you are, what you want to strive for. What I discovered in clinic after working with, I think by the time we'd sold clinic, I'd actually worked with over 6,000 people.
Wow. It's not just that one person that you help, to heal and to transform. It's when they are the best version of themselves. They go back and they're kinder as parents and they're kinder to their family members and their loved ones, and it almost does just create this ripple effect that starts to build a bit of a movement.
It really does. It really does, because that's what happens. And I think people surprise themselves with that ripple effect.
Yeah.
Because, I know we need counsellors, we need psychologists, and,
Totally.
God only knows that. The work we do, though, is it's faster, it's more outcome orientated. So that means that we're, pulling out that deep-rooted system that's holding them back so that they can go
Thrive.
forward, so they can. Yeah. And so when you get it from the root, when you can go back and really know where that started, and sometimes it goes beyond what they know. It can go back ancestral into, like past generations, and some people call it past lives. It just depends on your beliefs and everything. Mm-hmm. But, we can go back 10 generations of time and discover that they were carrying a burden from their great grandmother or grandfather, and that needed to actually be dealt with. So at that level, when it's released, which is what I'd done for my own life, that's when people stood into their true calling, who they were, what they were born to be, who and what they were here to do on this planet. Because, that's my mission, to help as many people to find their mission, because I know that at the end of the day, happiness is kind of almost very superficial. You can say, oh, I'm happy today because of this, and this. But, finding your soul purpose is a very deep, inner core element of joy that is so fulfilling. No one can take that away.
And it does come from a really grounded place, doesn't it? When I loved Oprah once termed the coin ecstatic joy, and I'm like, that's it. It's like it encompasses a peaceful feeling, but there's also energy behind it. And, it is at the core foundation is love, isn't it? When we can express ourselves, when we can make great connections, and when we can also empower others. And, I think we're both recognizing at this stage of our life, it's not about us anymore. It's about the movement. It's about seeing people thrive and seeing people awaken to their divine potential, and then being able to have the confidence to live it. And sometimes that confidence, in my experience, has been courage. Courage to step out of what perhaps society has deemed as the norm and follow your own path. And sometimes that means creating a new one and living on that kind of edge where you're moving into new foreign places and really finding the thing that lights you up. And in my experience, it's been an expansion. It's an evolution, isn't it? We're always changing, we're always shifting, we're growing. And I had the pleasure of joining you on one of your special masterclasses a couple of nights ago, where you talked about the master key, and you talked about this amazing, incredible program that you have created to literally, I think there was a word, billion dollar energy. And that really, because I'm an energy healer and focus on channeling and intuition with professionals as well, I really love the idea of to me that just speaks of no limitations. Like, it is just when you're empowered, when you're following that path, that intuition's just lighting you up, doors open, synchronicity happens, the right people come at the right time. When we're to me, that is our natural state. But the person that gets in the way and holds ourselves out from the things that we really, that we really know we're passionate about is quite often our own limiting beliefs. And so to get the mind working for us instead of against us,
exactly,
that's when we open that door. And I know you talked about, a few master keys. And
that's master key 1, Lisa. So
the reason,
so the reason that I make that number 1 is because it doesn't matter how talented, gifted or successful you are or rich you are, without the health of your body, you've got nothing. So
what exactly is the first one?
Yeah, so Master Key 1 is $1 billion energy and health, ageless mind, timeless body. I mean, when I became a clinical hypnotherapist, that was sort of what I became known for as a hypnotherapist, like helping people with their body, getting their body into that, that form that they wanted, dropping excess kilos. A lot of people would come in if they had, even things like Lyme disease, or they had a lot of autoimmunity. Because what we're finding is that it all comes from the manifestation of emotions.
Absolutely.
And what
There
we've
is the
stored
correlation.
in the body.
Yeah.
So when we release that, that is when we rise up. So that's Master Key 1. 2 is recoding the relationships. And that's really because everything's about relationships, as we know. I mean, we were born into families or guardians, but there's always people. But the people around us actually help form our beliefs and our values. So, all of us have those stories that we tell ourselves that we're not good enough. And we have patterns with people, and we have good ones and we have not so good ones, and we have terrible ones. And so it's really about being able to recode and rebirth so that we're not carrying the same affliction. We're not attracting the same people. And I mean, I'm still doing the same thing. I mean, I believe we're always going to have to work on ourselves. And then number 3, which is very popular, especially in the coaching space, is prosperity codes. And this is where
abundance.
Yes, this is where it comes from the way you see yourself, your self-worth, your self-love, your frequency. So quite often, and I think this happens in the coaching space, sometimes when you're passionate and you're giving like yourself, you almost feel guilty to be overcharging. And then there's people out there that go for broke and they're ruthless. But, needless to say, but like that entitlement. But I feel that when we have a really rock solid value of our own self-worth, our self-love and our self-empowerment and confidence, the frequency of money and, how that becomes more apparent in prosperity. If you go really deep into the prosperity codes, it comes into masculine and feminine, which you would know about the masculine and feminine energy and how that works in the coding of the body. And then last of all, 4 is the genius zone. So you've done a lot of healing, and like I have noticed with people, you heal and then you find that you turn your pain into your power. That's your genius zone.
That's where your message.
And and finally, 5 is your legacy. What legacy now are we going to live? For a lot of people that may be not coaches, healers and leaders, their legacy may be that they went back, they healed something that had been going down the family line for generations, and the buck stops with them.
Yeah, beautiful.
And that's a legacy. And for others, we're, teaching and
how do I share now?
Yeah,
what I've learned,
transform and market that message and make it very authentic and very real and very part of their own DNA. Because a lot of coaches and healers are so good at what they do, but they are struggling getting traction in the online space, as you know.
Yeah, so it's about when we all come together, we can all thrive and support one another, isn't it? So there's something about contributing together creates more energy. All right, we're nearly coming to the end of this beautiful conversation, Terri. Thank you so much for everything that you've unpacked for our listener. So I've got a quick lightning round that I want to fire at you. So we'll see how quickly we can get through these 6 questions. So I just want your short answer. You ready for it? And she doesn't know these questions.
Go.
So let's go. What's one daily ritual you personally use to reconnect with your intuition, especially on those chaotic or off days?
Grounding. So, grounding.
Yep. So how can a wellness practitioner tell the difference between fear and an intuitive insight?
Okay, so fear is really something that comes from a past experience where the intuition and the spiritual element is more about, I get this feeling that this is not right and I need to listen
and it
to
might
this.
not make
but I
logical
fall into
sense.
that trap.
Yeah,
I fall into that trap, Lisa.
So we all do.
Yeah,
and it might not make logical sense, but there's just there's just something we know,
Gut
but we don't
feeling.
know why.
Yeah.
Beautiful. What's the most surprising thing your intuition ever told you that turned out to be right?
Ooh. Okay, so I believe it was probably about becoming a practitioner. because I never ever went into NLP to do that.
Intention. It was
That was
self-healing.
not my intention.
Beautiful.
But there was something deep, deep inside of me from even when I was a child that saw what I'm doing today. And,
I had the same thing. Isn't it funny when there was a part of me, and it wasn't from an ego place, but there was a part of me that knew I was here to do something special. And it was just like there was this knowing that I'd been put in here for a reason.
Yeah.
And some part of me had to awaken.
I do just want to say one more thing, though.
Go for it.
One of my children that had lived a very troubled life as a teenager and became very, very ill with anorexia nervosa, and we nearly lost her. I knew she was going to be okay, and I knew right from when she was going through the thick of her troubles. And I would actually tell her and remind her, you're going to be okay. You're going to be okay.
So
and I feel, that belief that I had was an intuition that I had, but it was definitely a great thing to have imparted.
Oh, definitely. That would have massively made a difference in her life for sure. And she's okay now?
Yes, she's amazing.
That's beautiful.
Absolutely amazing.
Because I've
mother
worked
and
with a lot
beautiful.
that have struggled with that as well. So in your view, what's more dangerous for a practitioner, overthinking or ignoring their inner knowing?
Gosh, they both are shocking. They are, aren't they? Oh, dead heat. Overthinking or ignoring. Well, look, if you ignore your instincts or your, those little downloads you're getting, then it's going to get passed on to somebody else. So you have to ask yourself the question, if you receive a download and you ignore it and then someone else is doing it the next month, how are you going to feel as opposed to if you just keep overthinking everything and you're walking on that treadmill and you're overwhelming? So it really will vary from person to
holds
person.
people back, isn't it?
Yeah.
I like progress over perfection, which is why we're here today, right? It's that exact thing that says let's take action even though we don't really know what we're doing.
Yes, that is a great question, Lisa.
Yeah.
But I feel like it definitely will come down to that individual person.
Yeah. But they're both pretty disarming. So if someone feels disconnected from their intuition, what's the first small step they can take to rebuild that trust?
Trust or intuition? Trust.
So if they feel disconnected from their intuition, so quite often a lot of practitioners I work with in the wellness field, chiropractors, doctors, they're very left brain analytical and logical because that's where most of their work has come from. Right?
Yeah.
So disconnected from their intuition. So what's the first step that they can take to rebuild that trusting their inner knowing?
So it comes down to there was going to be a couple of answers, but for that particular word trust and that question, it would come back to what we teach in neuro-linguistic programming about clean language. So to get a piece of paper and what is it that's actually happening here? What is it that I am feeling? Where is this coming from? What is the purpose? Ask yourself all those what, where, and when questions. If it was about...
then you seek the truth. You can identify what's coming from those beliefs or from others, or is this actually true?
Exactly.
Is this true for me? I remember someone saying, oh, you seem really stressed out today. And then I'm like, you can almost take on that other person's perspective when quite often we're mirrors for each other, right?
Yeah.
And then it's like, is that true? Am I stressed today? No, actually, I feel quite
that's a
happy.
Good point. Actually, Lisa, that's a very good
trust.
That's a very good point because what is it that about myself that I do not trust? Where is that?
And it can just be a learned
from?
skill. It's a learned skill that no one's ever told anyone.
Yeah.
The power of their emotions. Quite often in our society, the emotion has been suppressed, shut down, especially with our beautiful men. I've had men come into my healing workshops and they're brave men because they'll be like, 28 women and 2 men. And when they tap into their emotion, and that's what the attunement to Reiki does, is it just shifts things and puts them directly in communication with their soul. They feel that soul's love. It's like a physical transformation that they get. And they'll literally break down and sob, and it's the most beautiful thing to bear witness to, like a man just fully, finally opening that floodgate.
Yeah.
And what I've seen in experience is that the emotions leave quickly. Quite often there's more fear around what it's going to feel like to release the trauma or to re-experience it, but quite often it's so empowering. It's just it's a quick, gentle release. And then there's a lightness that follows, maybe the next day, but maybe sometimes the emotions can be a bit exhausting. But
and that brings me
to it,
yeah,
right? When they let go.
Absolutely. I hear what you're saying, especially about like opening up those floodgates, especially for men, and seeing that. What you just kind of reminded me of as well is that every emotion will have its own higher purpose. So what could be the higher purpose? Because our subconscious mind doesn't deliberately give us these terrible, shocking feelings to deliberately stuff us up. It's doing it to protect us. So what is it protecting us from? And I believe also that if we can tap into, well, what could I benefit from having this fear? And, you know, really understanding where that comes from so that you can release it and let it go. And of course, as you know, there are so many modalities where you can even play with it, pulling it out of your body, looking at it, noticing what color it is, what would it be saying if it had a voice. You know, what would we prefer it to be? Now, that's the big $64 million question. So if we could turn fear to perhaps power so that we understand that fear is just false evidence appearing real.
Yeah.
You know, so if we can change that energy and then switch it, like, what do I need? I need to feel trust. Well, what do I trust myself in? And anchoring in those feelings and then and changing the coding system and just bringing it back into our body and breath work, then breathing. That's the life force.
Perfect. Well, we have there's so much that you've unpacked in this session. So thank you so much, Terri. And I'm sure there is so much more wisdom that you could share. I will definitely get you back on the podcast.
Thank you,
at
Lisa.
another date. So how can people find out more about your new Master Key program? Where's the best place for them to head?
So terrimessenger.com or nlphypnotherapy.com. And hit me up on socials under my name with Terri with an I, Messenger, and Instagram, Facebook, TikTok.
Places. We will drop all that information in the show notes. And just before we go, I like to ask people, what's the one question I haven't asked?
Wow.
That would make this, that would
bring out the, Look, I really feel you've covered it so well. What could be a question?
So is there anything
would I like to? What do I visualize for the future?
Oh, great question. What do you visualize for the future, Terri Messenger?
Okay, well, miracles. The magic of miracles, if I can just say it like that, and
everyday miracles.
Helping tap into those supernatural miracles and not just looking for unrealistic, profound things, but the incremental little miracles and being grateful for them.
Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah. You know, it is quite often the small things we miss the most, isn't it, when we lose our loved ones? I remember a mother of a lady that had lost a child, and she said to me, oh, what I wouldn't give just to hear that back door slamming one more time, you know, and it's just, isn't it, these things that quite often we take for granted. And you know, and I've spoken to many of my students about the power of gratitude and just focusing on sometimes these life's challenges and the things that are the most painful for us to experience. And you and I have both certainly been through our dark times. It gives the space for love to come in and fill that void, doesn't it? And it creates connection with others that is unlike anything else when you can be open and vulnerable and share. And you're absolutely right. Relationship, in my experience, is the most important thing.
Yeah.
And we have such a beautiful opportunity to have a rich, diverse life. And if we just seek out to understand each other with compassion and kindness and love, the world will be a much better place. So I'm so glad you're by my side, sweetheart, sharing your love, sharing your light, sharing your wisdom with the world. And together we're going to see a movement of change where people tap into their intuition, trust themselves, and love and care for others. So thank you again, Terri.
Thank you, Lisa.